IGN published a fighting game video, which is pretty rare. How to get good at fighting games, the 2D ones anyways. This one says how to get good at fighting games, so I'm expecting some actionable steps here to take to actually improve your skill level. Let's see.
I have a lot of friends who play video games, but among them, very few who play fighting games.
I will say off the bat, I respect Jurassic Rabbit here, establishing a little bit of street cred. A lot of these guides from these major publications, the stock footage is CPUs beating each other up. So the fact that he's here flexing, hey, I'm in high master on Street Fighter 6, and then I can play all these games competently.
While simple inputs, auto combos, and modern controls may make it easier for people to get in at a casual level, if you're not thinking about the buttons you're pressing, you're basically just playing a fancy video game version of Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Very true.
And just like how you're not going to discover the depth of boxing by playing hours of Rock'em Sock'em Robots, you're also not going to learn what's fun about fighting games if you're just focusing on mashing single-button auto combos. So if you're interested in fighting games but feel like you don't even know where to begin when it comes to learning how to play them or enjoy them on a deeper level, here are some tips to get good at them. The 2D ones anyway.
And yes, what he said about mashing just being like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, it's very true. The general gaming consciousness and awareness of competitive esports and the respect for competitive gaming has mostly chipped away at the issue of brand new players picking up a fighting game and just mashing mindlessly and thinking that that's the end-all be-all and there's nothing beyond that. There used to be a legitimate problem prior to like the internet esport era where people would literally think that fighting games are just mindless button mashers, and that was the extent of the depth of the genre, and it was whoever can mash the fastest was the better player.
The key to enjoying difficult games like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and especially roguelites is to understand that dying is all part of the experience. Especially
The Yipes quote is doing works. You have to get washed to get clean. This quote was popularized by Yipes. He accredited it to, I believe, another member of the fighting game community.
Roguelites is to understand that dying is all part of the experience. Every death is a lesson. And part of the skill of those games is applying those lessons to future attempts and learning from your mistakes. But to have that clarity of mind to be able to do that, you have to be okay with failure.
I coined
There's
desync.
a common expression.
It didn't take off though.
You have to get washed to get clean. And it's true. There's just too much information to take in when you first start playing any given fighting game. All the fundamentals, the system mechanics, everything your character can do, what your opponent's character can do, what's safe, what's punishable, etc. You can't expect to know how to deal with everything from the get-go. You have to absorb it over time. And the best way to do that is to go into your matches with a mindset that's focused more on learning than on winning. Eventually and inevitably, that mindset will shift once you feel like you've learned enough, but you always have to remind yourself that losing is part of the process, and that there's always more to learn.
Very true. I would add a little extra to that and say that it's important to gamify your learning as well. Going in with a learning mindset is really important because you're probably not going to win, but I would also say make little mini games for yourself to have a better time with the process. Like, have a goal in mind. I'm going to focus only on anti-airing. I'm going to try to land this one little whiff punish. I'm going to try to land this one little throw tech, whatever it may be, as small as it is, bite-sized as it is, the more bite-sized and achievable, the better. You need to gamify your learning, and that will give you the dopamine hit you need to motivate you and reward you for playing without necessarily having to get to the W. If you make your dopamine cycle entirely dependent on a win or a loss, you're going to have a very bad time. But if you can gamify these small moments of learning, it can really help improve your journey and make it a lot more enjoyable along the way.
Don't let thoughts of "I suck" or "this is too hard" ever stop you. You will improve, and the feeling of overcoming or learning how to better deal with a tactic or character that previously gave you trouble is one of the most powerful feelings in fighting games, and one part of what makes it such a special genre.
Very true.
Blocking is pretty much the most important skill you'll need to learn when playing fighting games. Fortunately, it's really easy. You just hold back to block standing and hold down back to block low. You'll generally want to default to blocking low, as it blocks both low and mid attacks and also prevents you from backing yourself into the corner. Then you can switch to a standing guard to block jump-ins and overheads, which will break through a crouching block. Note that Mortal Kombat is unique in that you have a button.
This is great. One small critique. I would be concerned if a brand new player was lost when you said lows and mids. It's definitely difficult to explain blocking and the different types of levels attacks could hit at the same time. You kind of have to introduce them simultaneously, I believe. What is a mid? And even then, I don't know their definition of mid. I guess their definition of mid is attacks that can be blocked low or high. If you talk about mids cross 3D games like Tekken, that's a different definition as well.
As for when you should block, basically whenever you're not committing to offense, you should have your finger or thumb hovering over the down back buttons, ready to block. But you especially want to be blocking when your opponent has the advantage over you. Characters with dive kicking special moves, which allow them to halt their aerial momentum and dive downwards at an angle, like Cammy in Street Fighter 6, are a little unique in that if their dive kick hits high on your guard, it's generally your turn, and may even be an opportunity to punish. But if they hit low, like around the feet, it's not your turn. There are some exceptions, but generally this is how dive kicks.
Going into dive kicks? You're getting to the weeds real quick. I'm surprised, like, you even mentioned dive kicks. In my opinion, like, for beginner guide, I would just hand wave this off as there are exceptions to this, and maybe have shown in the background a Cammy dive kick hitting the toes into a frame trap.
Work in most 2D fighters. Special moves and attacks that have an exceptionally slow startup animation have a fairly good chance of being what's known as plus on block, which in fighting game terms simply means it's not my turn on defense. Examples of this include Ken's heavy Dragon Lash kick in Street Fighter, Soul's Fafnir in Guilty Gear Strive, Vi's charged S1 in 2XKO, etc.
I fear people might be lost at this point. These are all great things to point out, but there's a lot of assumptions baked in there, like what is pushback? I think you need slightly better visual examples to quickly cover these things.
Allow the attacking player to keep their turn even if they're blocked, like Grand Blue Fantasy Vs. Forward Light Attack, commonly known as 66L, or Dragon Ball Fighter's homing attack while in sparking mode. There are also some universal rules of when it's your turn to attack after blocking. But as a general rule of thumb, if you press your fastest button after blocking something and notice that you're getting counter hit, you should make a mental note of that and say, okay, probably not my turn after I block that move.
That is the takeaway.
So now that you know,
that is a key takeaway. You should make a mental note after pressing a fast button after blocking a move. If you get counter hit, make a mental note of it and think that you probably shouldn't be pressing after there in the future. That is what I'm referring to when I say sometimes you need to touch the stove to see if it's hot. Sometimes when you're in situations where you don't know what's going on, just try your fastest move as a way to establish a benchmark to understand. If your fastest move, if you do it right after blocking a certain move from your opponent, if your fastest move still gets you counter hit, there's no chance other moves will be able to move first and you're negative on block. And so therefore, you're in an unfamiliar situation. You decided to see if it was safe or not. You get punished for it. Okay, now you know. Now you know after blocking this, it's not my turn.
And when you should switch to offense, let's focus on what you should be learning when you pick a character and take them into training mode. First off, pick a character that does what you want to do. If you want to play patiently, hanging back, throwing projectiles, and making it hard for your opponent to come to you, find a zoner character like Guile in Street Fighter, Axel in Strive, or Kain in Fatal Fury, just to name a few. If you don't want to focus on lengthy, difficult combos, and want to just bully your way in, land a couple of big throws, and call it a day, pick a grappler like Zangief or Potemkin. If you want to apply suffocating pressure and keep your opponent guessing on defense, find a rushdown character. Once you've got your character, focus on these three things primarily. How do I land a hit?
Let's see.
What do I do when my opponent jumps? What do I do when I land a hit? Let's break down each of these individually.
That's not a bad checklist.
How to land a hit is hard to talk about generally because it really does depend on what game you're playing and what character you're using. A slower paced 2D fighter might favor a more patient and reactive style of poking, anti-airing, and capitalizing on your opponent's mistake, while something like 2XKO encourages a much more aggressive and mix-up heavy style of play. In any case, here are some of the ways you'll be landing hits in fighting games. Think of this like your toolbox, and credit to glossary.info.net for these definitions.
Okay, they're going to cover poke. What else did they cover? I feel like they should go in depth and actually break down these with timed visual examples. And yeah, talking about whiff punishes, like, why would someone whiff an attack? I feel like that's super important to mention. You're jockeying for position on the screen, and you want to make contact with the opponent, predicting or thinking they're going to occupy a certain space in front of you for their own purposes of establishing a better position. But with their movement, they can retreat and bait out your attacks or not occupy that space cause your predictive attack to whiff, and then they can react to that and press their own attack to in turn punish your whiff. I don't know, I think there's a bit of just the flow of fighting games to explain here. Mix up. I don't even know if I consider Street Fighter 6 Oki with Drive Rush lower overhead to be a mix-up. That might be a personal thing. Let me read the textbook definition they got here. A situation where the offensive player has several ways to attack that each require a different defensive action to stop, such as blocking in a different direction and avoiding throws. You know, there's in some other gaming fighting game communities, they get really anal, I'm gonna use the word, about what they define as a mix-up. Like in DBFZ, if your shit does not hit frame 1 high-low actual mix-up where you can't fuzzy block in any direction, it's not considered a mix-up. They don't consider it mix. And then other anime communities get real into the whole reactable or not mindset, where people don't consider things within a certain reactable window with their animation to choose the right defensive option to be considered mix. And I'm not as extreme with that, but I kind of lean a little bit in that direction. Because I don't know if I consider the same knockdown into a Drive Rush crouching low or Drive Rush overhead to be a mix-up. I consider that a reaction test. You're going to gloss over frame trap? I don't know, man. I'm not sure if I co-sign this section of the video. These are all great concepts to cover. And like the thing about tick throw is, in my opinion, a tick throw is almost like a subset of a frame trap. I guess not all tick throws are true tick throws, but like a Street Fighter 6 style tick throw where you get +3, +2, whatever, and you throw them. That's almost like a frame. It's like a subset of a frame trap almost. Like there's fundamental concepts here that are important to understand
in general,
that these fall under. Focus on these: long range. Poke, long range, low committal normals and projectiles. Anti-air, don't let them jump for free, and punish. Make them pay for their unsafe moves. Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good starting point. Also, maybe I would include like your light punches. I would maybe include a fourth element here of mashing. I don't know what I would categorize it as. So it's not just punish, it's also like under challenge. Like you want to know what your fastest option is. When they're close, do your fastest option. When they're far away, do your poke. Anti-air them, and then if they make big mistakes, try to get a punish.
Practice anti-airing, and also think about what happens after the anti-air. Are they close enough that you can run up and pressure their wake up, or does it reset you back to the neutral position where you're back to poking?
I feel there's a big missing component of the space control element. Why are people jumping? That hasn't been explained. And that goes back to the whiff punish. They explain frame trap and frame advantage, all that's great. But how do you get into that state? That is done through the neutral. Why do people get hit in the neutral? Well, they're trying to hit you before you can get in to hit them. Why, if blocking is so good, don't people block forever? Well, if you block forever, throws beat blocking. Therefore, you're incentivized to do something, and throws are a true guess. You don't have any way to mitigate that. You're just actually guessing. If you keep getting put into guessing situations, odds are you're going to lose. So therefore, you want to be able to force them to block to make them guess if you're going to hit them or throw them. And therefore, you are both trying to fight each other and prevent the other opponent getting to a situation where they can force a strike throw. And you're playing this fencing battle. If you try to stop their movement and whiff, they can whiff punish you and get the party started. But if you never press, they can just steamroll you and push you into the corner. An option to jump over or mitigate all the attacks they can do on the ground is they can jump. Jumping can jump over all the space control they have and lead to big damage if it hits, and force them to block and get your strike throw mix right away. It's a shortcut to getting the end goal that you want, which is either a damage or a strike throw mix. Therefore, you need to be able to anti-air people with your move when they jump. Focusing on anti-air makes it harder to react on the ground, and that's the delicate balance of 2D fighters. I think that's a real fundamental missing component about the neutral. Oh, Cam died? Perfect.
A big mistake that a lot of players make is that they learn a combo and then autopilot the whole combo regardless of whether their first hit was blocked or not. This
Very
is bad
true.
Because a lot of the times the final hit of a combo is unsafe on block, which will lead to getting punished. So one of the skills that you will have to learn is what's known as hit confirming. So, for example, a very simple but effective Kami combo is light punch, crouching light kick, crouching light punch, light or medium spiral arrow.
This is the slime special here. This is very true. You have to be able to recognize that the hit sparks are showing the hit animation and only end in your unsafe ender of the combo if it's hit or not. I think this is a Valid time to bring this up.
Combo, I am autopiloting the 3 normal hits, but then I'm visually confirming whether or not the first 2 hits landed. If they did, then I would do the full combo, ending with Spiral Arrow. But if they don't, then I stop at Light Punch and switch to blocking, since Light Punch by itself is safe when blocked. This is a crucial skill, and I highly recommend practicing it by going into training mode, setting the dummy to random block, and letting the full combo rock if all the hits connect, and cutting it short if they're blocked. Thanks for watching, and for everything else in the world of video games, keep it here on IGN.
Okay, my verdict, not bad. For a beginner's fighting game guide published to IGN, I will say it could have been horrendous. I think they did a really solid job, so shoutouts to, I think that was Jurassic Rabbit. Obviously, I have some mild critiques. I do think that maybe the concept of neutral could have been better emphasized to understand the flow of the game, because I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about fighting games is understanding why you're doing anything. And I think that really helps to explain why blocking is so powerful. I feel like telling people blocking is good, it doesn't register to beginners until you tell them that blocking beats everything except for throws. So therefore, why are you mashing and getting hit? What does it matter? Right? Like, that helps to start getting the gears turning to understand, yes, you do have to sometimes take your turn back and try to press buttons and jockey for position. And it makes you understand why you are pressing buttons both defensively and offensively. And it ties together with everything else. Why are anti-airs good? Why are jumpings good? Why is dashing good? Why are block strings good? Why are throws good? Why are people getting hit in the first place? What is the motivation behind the player on defense that I can exploit to then open them up and then go into my combos? I think that's super important. That was kind of not really addressed, I think, in this video. That would be my major critique, but overall, pretty good. I think you can learn a lot about the genre from this video, and I definitely respect throwing up some fighting game content on IGN.